Greetings and welcome back. It's been a while since I my last post. Obviously, the last one was in Spain. I was looking for CDs that were around. I managed to actually get to Corte Inglés and find some CDs in their section. Had a pretty wide variety, a lot of it obviously in Spanish, but they had the usual rock, pop, metal sections. So I spent easily hours there just going through the shelves and picking up some CDs. It was a pretty good experience, especially purchasing. I'm not really speaking too much Spanish. It was a bit of an adventure trying to pay for the CDs and everything, but I managed to pick up some pretty good CDs. I'll show you some of them that I picked up today. I will talk about some of them. I haven't listened to all of them just yet, as I put them on when I got home and unfortunately fell asleep listening to them, but I'll do more posts on my Instagram. That way you'll get more of an idea of just my idea on the CDs, or just what the CDs actually mean to me, or the music in general. So I also went to a second-hand store and an antique shop, and managed to find a couple of soundtracks. Wasn't exactly looking for anything in particular, but I found some music that was kind of on my want list. So I picked that up and have listened to one of the albums a couple of times, and it's one of those, where was that music in the soundtrack? So I'll show you that one later, and then later, about a week later I think it was, my stepbrother actually took me to Barcelona, and not knowing where any stores were, we just went down a random street and found a music store. I was chuffed. Spent easily an hour in the store just looking at all the CDs. Bit confusing in the store, but each store is different, the way they have their CDs set up, or their display set. So it was just a matter of actually finding the actual CDs I was looking for. Had fun actually asking for some CDs. It was a very interesting moment, asking for Prince CDs, and the guy looked at me, and then my wife said, "Oh, you have to say that you have to roll the R and Prince." So I was like, oh. So rolled the R, and he knew exactly where to show me, and I found at least 30 bootlegs. Not enough money to pick them all up, unfortunately. So managed to score some CDs in that store too. A lot of them were ones that I couldn't really find here in Australia, or if I could find them, obviously I'd have to order them. So it's kind of those, pick up something if you can't find it, because there was a lot of albums I could have picked up or would have liked to have picked up, but due to, if I can find them in Australia, I might as well pick them up here. So I just left those and picked up some others that I just felt like listening to at the time as well. Another store that I found, a bit of a interesting find, was a store that sold patches for bands. I just kind of started looking at their patches and wasn't really going to buy anything until I saw a Prince patch. If you've been following me on my Instagram, you'll see that I had the Prince patch sewed on. That was my first patch I put onto my jacket. So I've been collecting patches for about 2 months now, and didn't have a jacket. So as you most probably saw on my Instagram, picked up a jacket while I was in Spain and started sewing the patches on. So the Prince one was the first one I put on, and I ended up picking up about maybe 15 patches in the store. So I had a good chat with the guy. He's once I started asking all these questions, his English came out, and it was an interesting conversation, but we had a conversation nonetheless. So we managed to actually have that talk, which was good. So what I'll do, I do apologise for the shake in the camera. I'm kind of just holding the camera as I go. So I'll show you some of the CDs I picked up. So one of the first ones for me was a very big find. Difficult to find in Australia. Not that I've been looking hard, but I managed to find a copy of the Superman, sorry, I don't know my albums, Superman soundtrack. So that I'd been looking for. That's a two disc set. So I've been looking for that for a little bit, and I've always wanted to get the Superman soundtrack. I'm not too sure about the other soundtracks, but the Superman one was definitely one I wanted to pick up. Iconic music by John Williams. So I just wanted to actually have that into my collection. So Another one that I picked up, this one was from Corte Inglés. They had all the Beatles albums for €10, which is pretty cheap, because in the stores here they're roughly about $22. So they're basically half price in as it is. So I managed to pick up the next one in my collection, because I'm trying to collect the Beatles albums in order of release. Don't know why, it's just one of my little perks of collecting music. So the one that I picked up was Help. So that's my next one that was in the collection to actually pick up. Gave it a couple of listens. My favourite Beatles song ever, Yesterday, is on it. I really love that song, and the entire album is really good. You can't really go wrong with the Beatles. Obviously, they start to get into their own a little bit as they get further on, but I've always been a bit of a Beatles fan. As you most probably saw if you follow me on Instagram, is that I had a bit of an Elton John kick. So I started looking for Elton John albums. A lot of them that I picked up were pretty cheap, which was good. So I picked up Two Below 40. I think that's how it's pronounced. Or Too Low for Zero, sorry. So that's the album. I'd actually eyed it for some time, initially here in Australia. And it was just one of those albums that I always wanted to get, and gave it a couple of listens. I really enjoyed the actual album as a whole, so it's really growing on me. I like the later or mid 80s or early 80s Elton John, as opposed to some of the early stuff. It's like really good, but that's the stuff I grew up on. So when I was growing up listening to the radio, as you must probably know, Elton John was the 80s Elton John was what I was listening to at the time. So another album that I have talked about on my Instagram was this one. So that's pretty good, Victim of Love. I've heard it twice. Not as bad as some people have actually been saying it is. So I've actually rather enjoyed it. It hasn't got a major disco sound, but it's pretty good, pretty short, but I really enjoy it. So it's being one of those that's kind of amazed me. One of the very, I think it was late 70s, early 80s that was released. Another from the soundtrack family is How to Train Your Dragon. So I picked that one up. I've always liked the movies, so when I saw the soundtrack, I thought it'd be a very good soundtrack to actually get. So I've had a bit of a listen. It's got that kind of Viking-ish feel, as you must probably know from the movies. It's actually very good. I rather enjoy it. A little bit childish in the sense of, like, obviously it's a kids movie, so you get that feeling in the actual score itself. But in general, the soundtrack's really good. So another one I picked up, a band that I recently got into but have been wanting to listen to for at least 10 years, Disturbed, so The Lost Children. So from my understanding, this one's more of kind of like a best of, but not. It's more of their B-sides. So I've had a bit of a listen. For me, the standout track is the U2 song. I can't remember what the name of it is right now, but that's one of the songs towards the end of the album. It's really good. Disturbed are a really good band. I've really enjoyed hearing all their albums and getting into their albums. Their latest one is top notch. I just really like that one. The next one is Asylum, another Disturbed album. I've listened to that a couple of times. Still very good. The quality on it just changes a little bit from their first couple of albums, which is good. I've always liked that when bands actually change their sound. So it's always good to have those sounds. Once again, I do apologise for the camera shake, just holding the camera here as I'm trying to do this. Another one that I picked up is Korn Issues. So Korn is another one of those bands that I always wanted to get into around the same time as Disturbed. I really like the single Freak on a Leash. The bass in that was just amazing. That's what kind of drew me to Korn and the sound of Korn. So actually listening to their music, once again chronological as it's been released, has been a real treat hearing their sound evolve. I really enjoyed Issues. I picked up the album that's after that one. I think it's Untouchables. Really good album, but that's from another pickup. This one I actually picked up in the second-hand store, so it's Thelma and Louise. It's an album that I've kind of been thinking about picking up for some time. I really enjoy the movie. I think Ridley Scott's a very good director. So when it comes to the actual soundtrack, it's got those iconic songs in it. The Tony Child song that I always wanted to kind of hear the soundtrack. And that's that album that you kind of wonder, where is that song in the actual movie? So you have those questions, but as a whole, the entire album's really good. But that's a Spanish release. It's got some of the titles are in Spanish, which I don't mind. It's the album that I'm after, so I don't mind if some of the writing is in Spanish. Another one I picked up was Madonna's Ray of Light. More picked up for just one song, the title song. It's a really good song. The album in a whole is pretty good. I'm not the biggest of Madonna fans, but I don't mind her music at times. So it's something fresh and different to what I normally listen to. So having that change is pretty good. So I just kind of run with it, and if I feel like having a change, I just change things up by having different artists. So the next one is David Lee Roth, Eat 'em and Smile. So I'm a pretty big David Lee Roth fan, mainly from obviously the 80s, from after he left Van Halen. I really like the EP that he released. I haven't actually heard it, but the songs that came from it I really enjoy. That's on kind of my want list, my wish list. So if I can get my hands on one of those, I'd be pretty chuffed. As a whole, the album is very good. I've only listened to it a couple of times, but yeah, it's been pretty good. I enjoy the music very much. This one I was actually surprised to find. It's a 2019 re-release, Mr. Bad Guy, Freddie Mercury. So once I saw that on the shelf, I thought I have to pick that one up, and that kind of completes my Queen collection and obviously my Freddie Mercury collection. As a whole, amazing. The album is just pure Freddie Mercury. There's nothing that can be really said about it. It's kind of disco-ish, but not fully disco, and it's got that really great sound that just Freddie Mercury brings to all of his albums. The next one is Shaft. I know there's a lot of albums that I picked up. I was very excited to get to picking up some CDs, especially in Spain. Is Shaft the soundtrack? So listen to it a couple of times. Obviously the iconic Shaft theme by Isaac Hayes. You can't go past that beat and the guitar. You sing along to it every single time you hear it, so you just enjoy it. And it's just one of those albums that just puts you in the groove. You can't really go past it. The next one, another soundtrack, is the soundtrack to Starship Troopers. Not one that I was particularly looking for. The movie, I've always enjoyed it when I have watched it. So it's just more of those, what's the soundtrack like? Because last time I saw the movie would be more than 15 years ago. So it's one of those surprise albums. I'll have to give it a second listen. I'll give it a review on Instagram once I actually get the time to do that. So that'll be pretty good. Sorry about the camera shake on that one. Next one is Kansas. I reviewed this already on Instagram. It's part of my 1977 collection, so I believe it's album number 94, if I can remember correctly how many 1977 albums I've got. So prog rock at its best. I haven't got a lot of prog rock in my collection, but I'm really starting to get into it. Early Genesis I'm starting to listen to, so I'll be picking up some Genesis albums in the future, but that's future videos and future things. The next album is Elton John's debut, an album I've been looking for quite some time, despite what I said about his earlier stuff not being my favourite stuff. I always like to hear how an artist begins and what they do at the start of their career. And Elton John's Empty Sky is just phenomenal. I really love the entire album, from start to finish. Valhalla, my favourite song on the entire album. Heaps of other songs on the entire album that are really good, but that one obviously with my love of Vikings and everything kind of stands out, and my ears pricked up listening to that one. The next two are ones that I kind of wouldn't have found in Australia. They're not really on the shelf when it comes to actually picking them up, and that's the band Cinderella. So that's their second album. I picked up their first album as a vinyl from a second-hand shop. Really enjoyed the sound. It's the first time I'd ever heard Cinderella, and just loved the sound of their music. And so seeing their next two albums, this one is Heartbreak Station. Sorry for having to read that. Still learning my music. Both phenomenal. They kind of go away from the hair metal sound that they had in the early 80s and go towards more of a blues metal. I've been doing a bit of reading about them. They lost some fans because they went down that road. I personally really like it. The mashup of blues and metal goes really well. The artist, the lead singer's, voice on it is really good. He's got a very good voice for that kind of blues sound. And I'm looking forward to finding their last album, which I might have to actually order. So I'll wait for that one to come in. The next one is Elton John, 21 at 33. So I've only heard this one once or twice. Really good songs on it. Once again, only heard it a couple of times, but I've really enjoyed the album. I'm starting to really get into more of the, not obscure, but the Elton John albums where I don't know what's actually on them. For me, that's been the treat, because obviously anyone can just pick up his best of, and I'm not putting down best ofs, but anyone can just pick up one of his albums and go, okay, well, I enjoy that. But when it comes to an album where you don't know any song on it, that's what I enjoy the most, because you're introduced to new music, and that's, for me, something that is always a thrill, hearing new music and finding new music. And for me, that's what my music journey is all about. So I'll finish off with Elton John, A Single Man. Obviously, everyone knows the iconic album. That, for me, has been the find. There's songs on it that I really enjoy, Part-Time Love, and other songs. I can't remember all of them right now, unfortunately. But obviously, I'll give more of a review on my Instagram page. Like, I've just really enjoyed this Elton John kind of ride that I've been going on for the past couple of months. Just hearing new music and going over the albums that I already had, and hearing those new albums for in a different way. So it's been really good. Really good experience, and I've kind of not grown, but just learnt more music or heard more music in that regard. So that's basically all my CDs, my little trip to Spain and back home. So I'm hoping to post more, and I'm hoping that you enjoyed this video. So I do apologise for the shake. Hopefully I'll get a little bit better at doing these videos, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay.